All right, there we go. Welcome everyone once again. And I believe this will be a liminal recording, so we're not sure whether or not we will keep it, and we will leave it up to our participants. It'll be their decision as to whether the recording lives or does not. But welcome everyone to this event, which I want to call not a debate. It's labeled a steelmanning event, and yet we also won't be focusing necessarily on the logic and rationality, maybe, sense of steelmanning in terms of fallacies versus not fallacies, or the very rationalist side of that. Let's see, where's the mute? Is there a mute all? There's the mute all button. All right. I'll just, yeah. We will first, yeah, I want to recognize Bryan and Teri here. Go ahead and give a wave to everyone, Teri and Bryan, and everyone else. I want to recognize their bravery and their courage in being on stage, so to speak, around a very charged, interesting topic here. So I want to recognize that, and I want to, if we can, help them to feel at ease. So first, could I get some jazz hands just to recognize and support their bravery for what they're doing here? Everyone, we're yay. And secondly, to say that here are these brave volunteers, and they are speaking truth and what they believe, and they're also in some sense serving as kind of avatars, representing a pole or a position across a cultural divide. And so I also would like us as an audience to commit that, like, hey, we're not going to hold this against either one of them personally, in the sense of, hold some grudge or come after them afterwards if we disagree with them. Just that we are here in a spirit of community and love and support, and that we're thanking them for the risk that they're taking in front of us all, and that we're just going to be supportive and not hold that against them. So can I get around a thumbs up too, if that you can get on board with all of that? Great. Um, all right, and the meeting ID, there should be a meeting information that you can click to see the meeting ID there if you're trying to get somebody else in there. But all right. Great, welcome. And what I'm going to do next is bring our representatives forward by using the spotlight function. Here we go. And Bryan, I'm going to add you there too. So now, everyone, I believe in speaker view, you can still choose to hop out to gallery view, but if you're in speaker view, you should be seeing Teri and Bryan large, with a few other folks smaller on there. So welcome, Teri. Welcome, Bryan. First thing we'd like to do is just an emotional check-in. Can I hear from each of you? How are you feeling right now? We just want to check in with you on the emotional side. Teri, how are you?
Yeah, Bryan, you're muted. I think it's excitement. I think everything running through me is excitement, because I really have a sense that we have an opportunity to do a good thing here. And I'm nervous to be able to do it well. But I think I've got the best possible partner in Bryan, and I really can feel the support coming from our community, which I appreciate. So I'm all ready.
Okay, and on my end, I echo a lot of those same feelings. I'm also, in addition, feeling pretty annoyed right now. My computer is not working, so I'm on my iPhone. On the one day that I wanted my computer to work, it decided that it didn't want to work. So, and it's still just spinning at me and saying, just a moment. So kind of dealing with that. I can't see any of your beautiful faces. And so if you're going to be booing me or cheering for me, I'm just going to assume you're all cheering and I'm going to keep going forward. So.
Great. Well, I hope that that we are all here in the spirit today of cheering both of you and being able to do that. Excuse me. The structure for what we're going to try to do here today is that we'll hear some opening statements just to get a baseline, just to hear where these folks are coming from in the position. Then what we'll be doing after that is grabbing a technique that I don't know, that I learned as empathy circling. Some of you may have heard of it, and you can go to empathyscircle.com, and there's a particular, instruction and technique around that. But many of us would just also go recognize this by the name of listening and reflecting. And so we'll be doing a little bit of structure to this, but some deep listening, Teri to Bryan, Bryan to Teri, and some reflecting in the what I heard was sense as part of the communication back and forth. We'll do a fair bit of that, and we'll do some rounds back and forth. And for that time, I'll request even that we kind of just give Teri and Bryan a quiet chat, and that we all turn our listening ears on, and that we're observing and being as respectful as we possibly can. And then we'll see where it evolves from there. And so to the audience, I would encourage you to be paying attention to just to how things are being said as much as what is being said, and what are the relational dynamics that are going on, and what do you see? What sort of shifts or moves do you see Bryan and Teri making over time, and how are they hearing each other and communicating with each other? And so we near the end of this event, we'll try to open it up and see what we think in terms of how it went. Not to declare a debate victor or loser in any sense like that, but how could we bring things like this, maybe from this environment, which is hopefully a warm and supportive one, out into our own conversations in the world as well. So I'll plant that in all of your heads. But now come back to Bryan and Teri, and for a few minutes. What did we say? Maybe was this about a 3 minute or something? I don't really remember, but I'll try to keep it fairly even. We'll say 3 or 4 minutes, just an opening statement. And this is nobody's going to reflect, nobody's going to respond. It's just your platform, your open mic, to just kind of summarize. You don't have to be comprehensive. You don't have to cram every potential argument in there, but just give us a flavor of where you're coming from and what's important to you as we approach the topic here of governments using mandates or some sort of penalty, coercion, force, that collection of words, mandating for vaccination for COVID-19 is our domain and our topic, as I'm sure we're all well aware here at this point. But yeah, so I'll go ahead and point to Bryan first. And why don't you go ahead and just try to relax into the topic and the space, and give us a 3-minute picture of where you're coming from.
Okay, well, thanks, James, for the intro, and hi, everyone. Just a little bit about myself briefly. So I am an expat Yank who's been living in Japan for 17 years now, teaching English to the locals. I'm a writer. I write fiction and blogs, and I've been doing a podcast for the past couple of years too. My political affiliation is basically none of the above / emerging anarchist. And the pandemic grounded my attempts in 2020 to fly to the US. I was going to go and do a cross-country trip there, And I was going to write a book, kind of a travelogue, an expat travelogue, seeking to answer the question, can Americans still love each other despite their differences? And that still is an open question. So I'm hoping today this will be one step in helping us answer that question. On the last weekend of February here in Japan, the Japanese government had kind of in a frenzy decided to cancel classes for the rest of the year in 2020, and because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And at that time, I wrote on my blog that my biggest fear was that the panic may actually cause more problems than the pandemic itself. And unfortunately, I feel that those fears have proven correct. As far as the topic of governments with mandating COVID-19 vaccines, I'm strongly opposed to them. I believe that they are, well, throughout my 48 years, I've experienced many things in my life and discovered plenty of evidence to support the position that these governments and these systems are not worthy of trust, and that right now more than ever, we need to be trusting ourselves and our own intuition and our own experiences and our own sense making. And yeah, as I've kind of witnessed the corruption and dishonesty and dysfunction of the game A systems, or as I like to use the language of metaphor, the tower, as I'm watching the tower crumble, my goal is to get out of the way of the crumbling tower and help build something different and new, help build that game B world that I think, as Charles Eisenstein puts it, our hearts know is possible. So I think that's where I'll leave it for now, and I'll turn it over to Teri.
Thanks, Brian. So I'm Teri Murphy. I think I know just about all of you here from EC. I'm a retired communications trainer, and I put a lot of stock and belief in the value of good communications backed up by an understanding of polarity tensions to solve a lot of the problems that can be solved. And that's one of the reasons I'm excited about tonight. I personally have not suffered from COVID. Lockdown has been easy. My husband and I are both retired, but we have a half a dozen friends that have gotten sick with it. Two who have had long COVID are still struggling with long COVID, and one friend whose father died pretty likely from a more than careless exposure by somebody who was both unmasked and unvaccinated. On the other hand, we also have my husband's daughter is unvaccinated and has been able to, I'm very sympathetic to her. She feels like she has a medical sensitivity such that nothing reacts well from her. So she has been able to get a pass from her work to not be, and I'm happy for her for that. So my biggest concern, I'm going to be talking about my two sets of concerns. My concerns about the dangers and damages coming from lack of vaccination, and also my concern for holding us all together as a community, because I really strongly believe there's so many things we can only do when we're all working together, both from the EC, from the lowest level at family to community to nation to world. So those are the two sets of things I'll be talking about.
All right. Thank you to both of you. Now we'll flip back to Brian as our first speaker then, as we go into our structured rounds here. And again, what you'll notice at the audience is just the speaker will pause after speaking for 30 to 60 seconds, and the reflector will say, something like, "Oh, what I'm hearing is," and they'll try to reflect back what they've heard. And that will continue for a round of about 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll switch who is the speaker and who is the reflector, and we'll just take several of those rounds. So, and we Yeah, we'll try to stick to the format fairly closely at first, and then you will be able to relax as we continue to go on. So, all right, but yeah, here we go. So, Brian, the floor is yours, and Terry, you're reflecting.
Okay, I'd like to open with, well, trust. And who do we trust? And for me, there's no trust and choice are kind of connected to me. So, sorry. I don't believe that there's been any evidence that there's any reason to trust a government that uses force to compel us to do things, especially when it comes to something like what I consider to be a colonization of the body. My body is my body. Leave it alone. So.
Okay, Brian, so what I think I heard you say is there's a connection in your mind between trust and choice. And so the primary thing that's on your mind is you don't have a trust in government officials that are making these sets of decisions, and that those decisions are about your body, and therefore they're colonizing your body. They're working in an area that they have no jurisdiction or right to be working in, and you don't trust them. Did I get that right?
Yeah, it works. That works. So yeah, to elaborate on that, one of the issues I have with what's going on right now in our world is short-sightedness, myopic thinking. And for me, this is a holistic, big picture event. And I don't believe that these mandates are really about solving the issue of COVID-19. Because if you look at what's going on with the vaccines, they don't last very long, and they're not effective in that sense. And they're not going to create herd immunity. It's good. We're going to have to live with COVID-19. And so to me, these mandates are about something else. And I can speak to that in a minute.
Okay, so your trust, this mistrust of government extends in particular to mistrust of the choice of strategy for vaccines and mandating vaccines. I hear you say, because they are short-term effective. They're not, I think I heard you say they're not that effective, and for however effective they are, it's short-term. And therefore, they can't end the pandemic. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yep. Yeah. Let's see. So I want to talk briefly about where this is going, and it is going. And this is from, I haven't been working, like last year I basically wasn't working, and so I had a lot of time to kind of read into a lot of this, and it's going toward a biosecurity state with biodigital ID cards and controls over where we are allowed to go. We're already seeing that with, people in certain countries are not allowed to go to restaurants, to bars, to grocery stores if they don't have their vaccines, and if they're not updated with boosters or whatever. And so this is about control ultimately, and it's not really as much about COVID-19 as people seem to think with these mandates.
Okay, so your real concern is with the totalitarian aspect, the biosecurity state, that this is just a foot in the door, and what they really want is to be able to know everything we're doing, everywhere we're going, and we can see some countries are already enforcing that if you don't have a vaccination or you don't have a booster, you can't get into a restaurant or a bar. This is the tip of the iceberg. that you're concerned about.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and switch roles now. And Teri, let's hear from you about your reaction to the concept of governments mandating vaccination for COVID-19.
Okay, I think first I meant to say in my intro that I was really excited by the overview that Peter Lindbergh gave us that started this, when he said both sides are reacting from fear, that the one side is afraid of death and we're reacting with control, and the other side is afraid of control and we're reacting with being out of control. To me, that just really framed it. So from my side, it's true, I am afraid of death. Not for myself so much, but for other people I know who can't stay at home, and for the not only my own family, but the workers, the low-wage workers, especially the healthcare workers who are being exposed. I am really fearful for them, and my heart goes out to them. So for me, the single most important thing, the single most important fact is that if you're not vaccinated, you are more likely to spread COVID. And I know, I'm sorry, I went too far, Brian. I should pause right there. Excuse me.
Probably a good place. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know it's easy to do. So what I'm hearing you're saying is that you read the Peter Lindbergh piece and you did resonate with that there are the two sides, the fear of death and the fear of control. And you do recognize that within yourself, there is a fear of death, not necessarily so much for you, but you're seeing others and, many people, frontline workers and people out there who have more vulnerabilities, and that your concern is that people who are unvaccinated are going to spread and cause those deaths. Is that okay?
yes, that's good. And then I was just beginning to launch into the point after that, so the fact that my understanding has been until just recently that you're much more likely to spread it if you're unvaccinated. Now, I'm just since we set up this debate, I've seen some evidence that that's less true now with Delta than it was with the first variant. But that still, I would say, is number one concern.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, you're saying that your concern was that if you're unvaccinated, that you're going to be more likely to spread it. But you have been presented with some new data that with Delta, that's since we actually started this event, that you were presented with some new data, and that may be less true than it was before, but you're still concerned about that. Is that okay?
Yeah. And then my second set of concerns after that is crowding the hospitals. The fact that the vaccine drops the rate of hospitalization so much, as I understand it, makes me very eager for everybody to get vaccinated, both so that I have access to a hospital when I need it, and so we're not exposing the healthcare workers.
Okay, and so if I'm hearing you right, your second concern is the overcrowding of hospitals, and the vaccine seems to be, from your perspective or your understanding, the vaccine seems to reduce the effects of COVID-19, and so reduce the amount of people who are hospitalized, and then that would allow for access to the hospitals for others for other diseases, including yourself in case there's emergencies or whatever. Is that right?
And yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
because of that,
Okay.
I'm curious. I'm really eager to hear from you. How it is that isn't more important to you than the autonomy issue. Because I'm under the impression that just about everybody, even the staunchest libertarian, believes that my right to swing my arm, as they say, ends at the end of your nose.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here and pass the mic kind of back to Bryan. And reminder for both of you at this point, whether you continue with your own prepared points or whether you respond more to the other person is entirely up to you. There's no wrong direction here. So you may still speak as you feel led with your turn with the microphone. So Bryan, over to you again.
Okay, actually, Teri, I don't know if she meant to do this, but she kind of intuited the direction I was going, so I'll kind of flow out of that. Yeah, let's start with the issue of hospital overcrowding. In preparing for this, I came across something. In fact, it was just last night about that this issue of hospitals being overcrowded was actually an issue before COVID-19. And it's more a reflection of an infrastructure that has not been taken care of. And I would also add that, I do live in Japan, and over here, there's absolutely no issue with hospitals overcrowding from COVID. And I think that, sometimes we do get a little bit myopic in, where we live. We think that's the way it is in the whole world. So I don't know if that's the case, that they're being overcrowded all over the world in every country.
Okay, so where you're living, you're not seeing hospital overcrowding, and therefore I think maybe you're implying that it might be overblown. But to the extent that it is happening in the United States, it's an infrastructure problem, which I'm guessing you meant by that we should have planned for this years ago. We should be managing the hospital space better. I'm guessing you're saying something like that.
Yeah, and I haven't actually prepared this part, but I'll just kind of flow with this. Yeah, when COVID-19 started, my initial thought was, oh, the US is completely fucked because of your healthcare system and because of the way the system is set up there. A pandemic doesn't care about class, and yet America's healthcare system is based on class. Like, if you have money, you have good healthcare. If you don't, you don't. And yeah, so I kind of immediately thought, and just the way it's kind of a hodgepodge system there. And I'll make this even more holistic and say that visiting America from Japan over the years, every time I go back every 2 years or so, I see more and more lack of health in the culture, the obesity issues, the amount of people on psychiatric drugs. So I felt like, yeah, America is primed for a pandemic is going to hit a country that's unhealthy. So
you realized right off the bat that our healthcare system was in no state to deal with something like this, that it's taking all the wrong approaches, not holistic approaches, not providing service by class. And so what's more prominent in your mind is the weakness in the healthcare system.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And going with that a little bit more, I actually saw in summer, or I saw this recently, but there was a conversation Dr. Fauci had in summer of 2019, where he was asked, how can we, in the issue of something like a pandemic, what can we do? And Dr. Fauci said, oh, you wouldn't need to worry about it so much. You just, make sure you get sunlight and you get exercise and get your sleep and take care of your diet. All the things that many of us have been wanting him and other people like him to say. And yet, once this came about in March 2020, the only thing we heard were vaccine. The only solution is a vaccine. The only solution. And it was like, what about just talking about taking care of general health? Because that, to me, is really the issue here, is that we live in an unhealthy culture.
Okay, so this just revalidates for you that we live in an unhealthy culture. And when we were choosing the vaccine as the strategy, we should have also gone with prevention, vitamin D, sunshine, etc. And if we had done that, we maybe, I think you're saying, would have had much less need for the vaccine.
Yeah, and just the
All right.
vaccine. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Okay.
Teri, we'll pass the mic back to you.
Yeah, I want to just quickly make the last of my first set of points, which is that my belief is that the pandemic would be over much sooner, might be on its way over now, as in Portugal, if everybody had just lined up and taken the vaccine.
Okay.
And I said the pandemic portion, I realize it goes to endemic. It doesn't go away.
Okay. So if I'm hearing you right, you're saying that your belief is that if everyone or as many people as possible could have gotten vaccinated already, then the pandemic could have been solved sooner, and we could move it into the category of endemic. Is that right?
Yeah. And then my second set of concerns has to do with the cooperation in the body politic. I completely agree with you, Brian. This thing was bungled in so many ways. We didn't pick the best strategy. We didn't do the research. We lied about it. We got conflicting stories. There may be corruption behind some of it. I agree with all of that. And yet, there could be so much value in us all working together in one strategy, even if it's not the best strategy.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is, you do agree with me that there was a lot of bungled strategy from the get-go and some lack of honesty. And but having said that, if we could just kind of move through that and work together, then we could actually solve this thing a lot faster. Is that correct?
Yeah, good. Thank you. That's better than I said it. So, and I also want to, now I want to respond to what I hear is your main concern is going to the bio state. I don't think you're wrong about that. I think that train has sailed, as it were. And unfortunately, I think maybe all roads lead to that train. I completely share your concern about that. I'm maybe even more pessimistic about it than you are, because it seems to me it's something every government is going to want. And if we don't get it in 10 years, we'll get it in 50 years or 100 years.
Okay. If I'm hearing you right, and I'm a little surprised by this, but you share my concern, and maybe even are more concerned about the bio state, kind of biosecurity state, and that how that ship has already sailed, and the governments are, if they're not going to get it in 10 years, they're going to get it in 50 years, but they're going to get it because they basically are on that road. And you're kind of pessimistic about that. Is that right?
Yes, good. And thank you for correcting my analogy of the train sailing to the ship sailing. That was definitely an improvement.
Trains can sail.
And therefore, I think the vaccine is the wrong dog to pick a fight with. You're going to have to fix that analogy too. It's the wrong hill to die on. That there could be so many benefits to the vaccine. No, let me take that back. The vaccine is something that's going to create counter pressure, like Peter Limberg talked about, and therefore you're not getting all the cooperation from people like me who otherwise could.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, kind of your focus is that you do want to derail this train. We'll go back to the train of the biosecurity state, and but you feel like kind of picking the battle with the vaccine is the wrong car on the train to derail the whole train, that maybe we should be focusing elsewhere. And so people like me that are picking this particular battle are looking at the wrong, having the wrong strategy, basically. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, and we'll take another round here.
All right. Well, I'm going to narrow back in on So let's see.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
could we just do 10-second silence or something, or 30 seconds, or I'd like to just collect.
Let's take a deep breath. Yeah. Just checking in again. How you two doing? All right. I'm enjoying it, and you're both doing wonderfully so far, in my opinion. So thanks. All right, ready?
Sure. All right. That actually caused me to change course too. So now I want to make it personal. And this will be a little harder to talk about because it is personal. So my father, just yesterday, actually, I got an email from my brother, and he and my mother put my father in a hospital for he's having some serious neurological difficulties, and they don't know the cause. They've been trying to find out for several months. It's depression, anxiety, and I've never seen my father like this because he's a very cheerful person and a very grounded person. But and my concern is that this is a vaccine side effect.
Wow. Yeah, so the father is having some serious neurological issues. They're completely out of context. It sounds like there was, if I'm understanding correctly, no precedent for them. And apparently they've happened since he had a vaccine, such that he's being hospitalized. And that's a primary concern for me.
Yeah, and this connects with my frustration. And I want to talk about this. It's not just the government mandates, but the kind of intense media pressure for everyone to get vaccinated, and using fear and shame, which to me are really low energy kind of vibrations. And my father won't, even when I tried to bring up to him a few months ago the possibility that this could be a vaccine side effect, he got really angry at me and said, I don't want to talk about it. And he said, I know what the cause is. And I said, what's the cause? Okay, tell me, Dad, just tell me what's the cause. And he says, I don't want to talk about it. We're done talking about it. And so he's trusting kind of his understanding of the situation more than his own son. And I'm thinking this is the kind of way this whole situation has broken apart relationships. And it's really hard. So.
Wow. So the media has been using an overkill campaign that includes blame and shame for those who are not vaccinated. And that is creating ripples, not only in society, but in your own family, such that when your own father, when you tried to tell him your concerns about the vaccination, he wouldn't hear about it. And not only that, wouldn't even tell you what he was thinking it was. So it's this, the media thing and the whole public blame and shame thing is putting a rift in your family.
Yeah, and I would, that's mostly right. I would just, one little addendum is that kind of the pressure, not just the blame and shame, but the kind of pressure to like, everybody do this, it's the right thing to do, you all have to do this. But having said that, my father being, he said he just turned, it was his birthday last week and he's 77 now. I believe each person has a choice ultimately. And I didn't say to him before, I expressed concerns, but I never said to him, don't do it. And I felt like, yeah, if he feels comfortable with his choice, that's fine. But I do feel that the media, just as it's kind of been promoting how great the vaccines are, it's not doing its job in investigating whether the vaccines are great and are they unsafe. And that story is just not being covered. So
as much or more than the blame or shame, it's the constant pressure coming from the media, and which has blanketed out any real investigative journalism on their part of what might be problems with the vaccine or better alternatives.
yeah, that's pretty good. Yep, I think so.
All right, and let's pass the mic.
Well, I'm going to agree with you on that last point, Brian. The media thing is ridiculous in my mind, that they've hunkered down to be the direct spokesperson for the government rather than doing the investigation. And I've done a lot of thinking about this because I actually have an undergraduate degree in communication, in propaganda is what it was. They had a fancier name. And we really looked at how somebody just sent me an article on this. It might be Jeremy if you were here, and it put me back in remembering this. We went through this in World War II when we did propaganda lying about German atrocities to make them sound worse than they were, and minimizing how bad trench warfare was in order to get people to go. And there was all kinds of debates, and there was Dewey saying, no, don't lie to them, educate them. But the problem was that when you give the media, when the media or the president gives a complex, nuanced thing, people don't hear it. They only hear every 6 words. So it's like the media, the government is damned if they do and damned if they don't present a nuanced thing. Now, excuse you, you can see I'm thinking this through as I'm saying it. So the government is damned if they do or damned if they don't, but the media is the one that should be requiring the nuanced back.
Okay. If I got all that, I'll try to sum up. Yeah, so you have a history, you have a background in kind of studying media and propaganda, and you know about how during World War II there was, kind of overemphasizing and, basically lying or using propaganda to convince the public how bad the Germans were, and then downplaying some of the actual dangers. And that for the government, like from their perspective, they kind of feel they have to put out that message to get people on board, but the media's job is to kind of actually be a little bit more nuanced and not just be a mouthpiece for the government and how they present it. And you're concerned about that, how that's happening now too. It's kind of the same pattern repeating itself. Is that pretty good?
Yes. And of course, the whole internet thing totally changes that, because what the media doesn't challenge the government on, every podcast we listen to is going to challenge. And therefore, we're all listening to different podcasts.
Yeah, I wouldn't ask you to listen to my podcast. Yeah, so oh, they're good. So what I'm hearing you say is that now we've, unlike in the past, like there's another added element to this, which is the internet. And now if the government's saying one thing and the media is kind of being the mouthpiece for the government, now there's the internet out there, and so there's a bazillion podcasts and websites and such, and so we're all listening to different sources of information, and that's only causing more confusion and more lack of cohesion in the culture. I probably added on a little there at the end, but is that pretty good?
Yes, that was good. And in fact, now I'm trying to think back over our conversation and where we've disagreed on facts. Interestingly, I don't think I've heard us have a significant difference on a fact. Rather, it sounds like maybe it's different emphasis on priorities.
Yeah, and maybe that's a great spot, actually, to sort of, we'll take another breath here in a second, but then I'd maybe love to ask each of you kind of what is a question that you might have towards the other person and the other person's perspective, and perhaps we can continue relaxing our format a little bit and share the mic a little more equally. But yeah, so we'll think about questions, and if we want to go back more specifically around mandates specifically, or if you want to tie in other things, it's all up to you. It's okay. This is your space here, but we'll take a breath and then maybe we'll share a couple questions. All right. Well, maybe we can just take turns here too. Bryan, I'll ask you first. What sort of questions or curiosities do you have at this point towards Teri and what she's been expressing?
Well, I want to go back to derailing the train because I feel like, we're on the same wavelength on that. Like, we're concerned about this, where things are headed, and with the biosecurity state and such. But I'm curious why she doesn't feel the addressing the mandating of vaccines isn't a priority. Why that shouldn't be kind of where a key line in the sand.
Okay. And Marty, you can use you language. You're speaking to her directly, and we'll just catch that question there too, and take a moment. And before you respond to that, Teri, did you have any questions or curiosities that you've been holding with you towards Bryan and his perspective?
I think it would be on the hospitalization thing. I get that he's concerned that our whole medical system is going in the wrong direction, but given the state of the medical system and the large numbers of medical personnel that are burned out, dying, or quitting, isn't that something that makes you think that a vaccine mandate is attractive?
Okay. All right, so a couple questions out there. Now I'll get out of both of your way and just open mic, open floor for the two of you to share for about the next 10 minutes, if that sounds all right.
Okay, now you're thinking I'm going to remember what his question was? Hold on.
I can remember your question, and I can try to rephrase mine if you want, because it's more fresh. Two things. So the first question is, well, again, it comes down to trust in media. I'm not sure. I think that's another story that's been kind of overhyped about this unvaccinated filling the hospitals. Second point on that is, I know how they measure unvaccinated versus vaccinated, and if someone gets a vaccine and has an adverse effect, and they go to the hospital, they're still counted as unvaccinated for the first. It actually, from what I understand it, they're basically counted as unvaccinated until about a week after the second shot. And I'm not sure if that's exactly right, but so yeah, like if the unvaccinated are filling the hospital, well, how do we know those aren't people that are having vaccine side effects too? Like how that they could be part of the statistics. And then this might be too much, but I can stop there. There's one more point, but I'll stop there.
Okay, James, should we be reflective listening here, or should I just go on?
You can go with what you feel like now.
Okay, so that's kind of frustrating and saddening and scary, because that is a serious, different data point that you believe that maybe the hospital crisis is overblown and is not really the effect of new COVID cases. So that, I feel bad about that. Although I'm also sympathetic to the fact that they did a terrible job of reporting or appearing to even care about side effects.
Mm.
So I'm a little bit sympathetic to you, even though I'm sorry about it.
Right. And the other point on the hospital and the mandates is that, you know, there are two, well, I'll just say I've heard there are the two people who are like in the groups that are among the most unvaccinated are PhDs and healthcare professionals. And so there's kind of a media narrative about, you know, unvaccinated people are stupid and this and that, but yet why are PhDs the top group? But as for healthcare professionals, if you're mandating people to get vaccinated during a healthcare, you know, a pandemic, and that's causing nurses and such to leave their jobs, then you're just going to create even more of a crisis in the hospitals. And I could even extend that into all the public services where your police officers, firefighters, people who don't want to leave their jobs, love their jobs, but are like, I do not want to get this vaccine. So it's like just all these cascading effects on the society. So
I agree, and I will certainly agree that the way the mandate is being handled is probably not the best way. Even though I defend and agree with the government's right to do some kind of
okay, would you like me to ask my question again, or did you have any
I know
more?
I remembered it.
I
Why
actually
isn't
forgot
this
it.
the hill to die on, given the what I consider the inevitability of the bio thingy state? Well, it's partly because I think there would be a lot to be gained by more harmony around this topic. So save your bullets for the next topic. The next time we really do something. And I think probably it's going to have to be battled out in how is some kind of social credit score implemented rather than if it's implemented. And I want a functioning democracy in place to influence that.
And I'm going to apologize at this point because I just opened up Zoom on my computer, so I had a little bit of distraction there, but I wanted to see other faces, so now I can. Yeah, I think, yeah. So what I'm hearing though is that you feel this is inevitable, this kind of new biosecurity state. And that's where I think I have a disagreement. I feel like that's where I feel like, yeah, that's where I feel like the human, this kind of gets to my core spirituality and my core belief is that the human, this whole thing we're in is kind of what I call free will university. And we have this ability to change our future every moment. Like right now, I could change the future by just getting up and walking away from this meeting. I've just changed the future. It's kind of personal, it'd be kind of rude, but I could do that, you know? And so I can't accept a worldview that just accepts as inevitable a technocratic dystopia. You know, like I just can't. Like I have to fight against that. I have to say no to that. I have to draw a line at some point. And so to me, this is where I'm drawing. I mean, this is one of the places I'm drawing the line. It's like, all right, you're getting pretty damn personal when you're asking to put something into my body that I don't want to put into my body. You know.
Um, well, I hope you're right that it's not inevitable. I think my concern is that most forms of pushing back against it will make it worse. Unless we can find a constructive way to push back against it.
So I guess I feel like, yeah, I mean, if we're seeking, okay, getting just back to COVID-19, you know, how dangerous is it? You know, I mean, when people will use the stat of, I don't know, 4 million deaths in the world, but I've run some of these numbers. 4 million deaths out of 7.5 billion humans. It's not, you know, it's a way to use statistics as a kind of rhetorical device to say 4 million have died. This is so out of control. You know how many people die from car crashes? Are we talking about, I mean, I'm a bike rider. I'd be fucking happy if all the cars are off the road, you know? I hate cars. They're my enemy. But, you know, I'm just, so that's to me where it's being overblown. And I believe that COVID-19 is being used as kind of a Trojan horse to actually create and bring about this world a lot faster and than we're aware of. And when you look at the UN, you know, they're 2030, they've got this 2030 is like their thing now. And so they're using this decade, and this is the first one, and there's going to be other events coming up soon, a food crisis and other things that I think are being manipulated to create this world that it seems like, I would imagine most people, if you really ask them, do you want this world? Most people would say no, but when you're kind of put into a crisis situation, you kind of accept what you're given, you know, so.
I agree with the part that the pandemic certainly is, the government response to the pandemic is buttering us up for more control in other areas of our life, and that will continue with food shortages and shipping shortages, all of that. Everything's going to be an invitation for more control. But I go back to skillful ways of resisting, which is to somehow come up with a better option. Because the resisting is going to create the Chinese finger puzzle that Peter Lindbergh pointed to.
I guess I would say though, like, what I see from you, and maybe I'm wrong about this, is that you're supporting the mandate. And so it's, to me, that's allying yourself with this biosecurity state, you know? And so I don't know how I don't know, I'm trying to understand how, yeah, like, I could understand your position better if I saw that you were like, I wish everybody would get vaccinated. I think it's important to handle the pandemic, but I don't believe in the mandates, because I think that's going a step too far, and that's this government, you know, overstepping its bounds.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm trying to really understand, you know.
Mm-hmm. I think the reason that this doesn't seem to be the hill to die on is that we've already given so much over. Anybody, if you own a phone, if you have a credit card, a bank account, they've got all your data. They've got us already. Your Facebook account, the what's happening with controlling the pandemic is an important step, but it's only one step of 25 steps that have already happened. Now, when they want to put the chip in our arms, then I'll be with you out there. But even then, I think I'll be on the side of those of Ken Wood, are you here, who are trying to program that ship in ways that are less destructive than what we're all afraid of.
I don't know. I didn't bring this. One of my points that I had earlier was just how, to me, I do look at kind of a long view of history, and to me, this is connected to how it's a consciousness. It's a ends justify the means way of behavior, and it's evil. I'm going to use kind of language. I think it's an evil consciousness, and I don't think it's human. I don't think it's what we are as humans. I think it's it goes back to the slave trade. It goes back to how we treated the Native Americans when we came onto their land, and so it's just a continual need for control and a continual need that we know better than you. Listen to us. We're the authorities. And to me, these people are like the last people I would ever listen to. Like, they have no emotional intelligence. They have the whole idea that they're doing this for my safety. It's laughable to me, because I go back to my experiences as a 22-year-old smoking marijuana and being told that was so terrible that we're going to put people in jail for it. And yet, meanwhile, go get a Budweiser. That's okay. I put it in that whole framework of, this is not a culture that cares. This is not a consciousness that cares about us. And so the idea that it's, this is for our safety and concern, it just, to me, it's extra gross. It extra resonates really poorly with me.
I really appreciate your bringing up the consideration of consciousness. I largely, it's like I agree with you, but it takes me in another direction, because I think the evil, as Peterson said, is in every one of us. And if you or me had Fauci's job, we would have done what Fauci did. Chances are extremely huge, not 100%, but extremely huge. And so our consciousness, keeping a constructive consciousness about whatever is happening, is the only thing I see I can do to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. And Russell Brand often quotes the soul's sign, like the line between good and evil runs through every human heart, and I love that quote. So I am always trying to be aware of how much I'm projecting out onto the world, and how much ownership of my own shadow I should take. Having said that, I believe strongly in integrity, and I've walked out on jobs that were good jobs because I felt that they were not acting in integrity. So I'm not going to take ownership that I would have done what Fauci's done. I'm not going to say that. I believe I have integrity, and I would have said, yeah, this, I'm covering my ass here, and I'm getting, how he should resign, I don't know, but I do want to go to Fauci for a minute, because it's another aspect of how this has been bungled, in my opinion. People on my side of this issue, like, we generally look at Fauci and think of him as the kind of least trustworthy person in America right now. And yet he's still the point man for everybody get vaccinated. And it's like, either the people running this are incredibly incompetent, really stupid, or extremely arrogant, or probably all of the above, because he's the last person they should have, because none of us that need to be convinced are going to listen to him, but yet there he is. And he's not only there he is, he's like sainted, and it's baffling, but yeah.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if you are the 1 in a million person who might speak up and do differently. And maybe my shadow is that I am more, I know I have spoken up in a couple of situations, but my leaning is toward supporting the duly authorized authority for the benefit of the group. So I maybe lean too far that way in that polarity.
Yeah. I don't know. I think you're your statistic there, 1 in a million, I think is very much overstating it, because I can look at, now that I can see my screen, I can see probably, I don't know everybody in this room, but I can see 5 or 6 people I'm pretty sure would stand up, and that's in a room of 25. So I think there's a lot more of us that would stand up and do the right thing. And I think that's what's happening in the world right now. We're seeing that. And I feel like this fall has been a fall of a lot of the kind of rising up of this, people taking their power back and having their integrity and saying, and that's, I watched a video of a police officer who, who's in my home state in Washington, been there for 15 years, and he was doing a kind of a CB, signing off that he was going to leave the job that he loved and held dear to him. And he felt really bad about leaving, but he felt he had to do it because of his own integrity about not getting, not being mandated to get a vaccine that he didn't feel was, and so I see that happening right now. And that's actually one of the, I would say, unintentional by the powers that be, but, maybe they're creating this awakening that a lot of us are hoping for. So with their behaviors. So.
I respect anybody with skin in the game who stands up in a way they feel they need to. My concern is that people without skin in the game are standing up by yelling on social media in ways that causing noises. So I want to make a distinction there. And I also want to honor, I worked in 3 government agencies. I want to honor all the hardworking, dedicated, low-level folks who are doing the best they can.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. And that's another sad thing I'm seeing, is hearing of nurses who have been, in front of this from the get-go, and now they're being, because of their own decision, they're being told, well, that's actually, I said that wrong. Because of a government's imposition, they're leaving their job. Now because I've heard this framing of, well, it's your choice, we all make choices. And so if you're not getting vaccinated, then, it's your choice to not do that. And then you're leaving your job. Well, okay, that's true. But the other side of that is like, well, it's also a choice by a government to mandate this. And so they could drop the mandate, the thing I always wonder about is vaccinated people, we know now, they've said this, they can spread the disease, they can get the disease. But to me, again, if you are really worried, I understand protecting the vulnerable, but I feel like that also is overstated to kind of win this argument that everybody has to do this. So yeah, I feel that I'll stop there because
I did want to agree with you earlier about that we maybe don't have enough tolerance for risk, and that, so. And in fact, for me, it's not the death so much, it's the specter of long COVID. And I'm reading about nursing homes bracing for the long COVID. I'm actually a little more afraid of that. And for myself as well, I'm more afraid of that.
Actually, I read something yesterday about, and I don't know if this is true, but somebody went to like a chiropractor and they had long COVID, and they had some chiropractic work done on their back, and all of a sudden their taste and their smell was back. So, I always hold hope that there's like solutions that we're just not considering, and that's part of the beauty of being human, is that we have this creative potential within us. So, yeah.
I love that. And that's where I'd hope we can put our energies, is let's find creative solutions. Let's encourage the government to do a better job next time. Let's make a roadmap for how to do it next time.
And I didn't bring this one up too. It's sorry, just I want to. I kind of did bring up one size fits all, but natural immunity. Like, I'm a person. I'm a writer. I have more of an artistic leaning. But I was I all my academic career, I graduated with honors and stuff, so I could do good at school, and I did well in science classes. And I remember, learning about natural immunity, and yet, for some reason, natural immunity, even though I just heard recently that studies are showing that natural immunity lasts longer, it's stronger than vaccinated immunity, with a mandate, that's just off the table. And it's like, again, that's the issue I have here, is it's just so single-minded and singularly focused, and just ignoring. Well, I want to bring this also to just nature. Nature, to me, really has a lot of the solutions. And yeah, I think there's some studies about fungi as possibly being a solution for viruses that I watched on the movie Fantastic Fungi, and the guy Paul Stamets, who is kind of the main person that it's in that documentary, was working with UC San Diego on some studies right now about that for COVID-19. So I just feel like, yeah, there's just a lot bigger way we could solve this, and mandating this one thing is ignoring that potential and making us kind of narrowing in on this. This is, well, we're all doing this, and that is the world we're trying to avoid, where we all have to do exactly the same thing, even if it's not the right thing.
Yeah. Well, sorry to break in.
I'm going to say just one more sentence, and then I'm done. I would happily join you in coming up with that better, bigger plan for next time, if you'll get your shot for this time.
And with that, sorry to break in. And
it's a good place to break in.
I know you two could probably go for even longer, but you're 70 minutes in already, so I want to commend your stamina. And I look around the room, and I don't know, comparing it to maybe an average session of this length, but I see an awful lot of faces that have been paying a whole lot of attention and been in rapt attention to both of you. So I'm going to, well, actually, no, okay, I want to ask one thing kind of to close us out of the two of you, and then we'll kind of widen up and turn to the audience here. But as a closing statement, I'd love to ask, and this is spur of the moment, folks, so I'm putting them on the spot, but I'd ask, what would you do? If you, ideal world type of, if you were, I don't know, in charge of the government, right now or throughout this pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, kind of what do you think that you would do? You're trying to optimize for whatever combination of things, saving lives, preserving freedoms. What do you think the ideal, and I'll try to take it back. We'll try to take it back a little bit to, okay, governments using mandates or not using mandates, or how, or, what sort of ideal world would you paint if you were in charge? And maybe that can be sort of where you are now and reflect a little bit of a closeout for the two of you. First, I'll check, does that prompt make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Would either one of you like to go first?
I guess I've been going first, so I'll go first. First, please do not put me in charge of the government. I have no desire for that position.
Tough. This is a hypothetical.
I'd like to reject the offer, but thank you very much for your confidence in me, James, and everyone. But I'm not running for president now, nor will I ever be. Having said that, I kind of already addressed this. If I was in charge, I would have a holistic response. I would say, okay, everybody, it's time we start getting outside. I would probably hire Wim Hof and have him get up there and teach everybody the Wim Hof breathing method, because I've been doing it since May of 2019 and haven't been sick since. I would teach people that cold showers are actually, they can be kind of challenging, but once you do them, you feel great. I would talk about, getting out into nature, exercising outdoors if you can. Gyms are great, but if you can do it outside, it's even better. I would invest more in the arts, give grants to writers like me. But it's all joking aside. I'm serious and joking at the same time. But you know, and I would obviously drop mandates for COVID-19 and for all, you know, these, and kind of just address health from more of a, you know, diet and just more of a holistic perspective, and just relax a little bit, you know, like just relax, have some fun, you know, like it would be nice if we could see that from our governments and not taking everything so damn seriously. And also maybe I would tell Silicon Valley to take a back seat. Like, you guys think you're so smart, but you know what? Like, you're not. And technology people, I'd say the same thing. Like, yeah, that'd be my approach. So.
All right, Teri, how and what would you optimize?
Well, I can second everything Brian said, I think, but I am not taking those cold showers. My focus is more on, I would have liked to have seen the government spokesman at every level saying, well, the best we know is this, so we're gonna try this for now. And then the media to have pushed them on it, and all of us to have more civilly and constructively done our research and our discussion. I'm okay with the mandate still, but I'd like to have a sense that if the situation changes, and maybe it's changing now, that it's not a 6 million pound behemoth that's going to take 6 months to turn around. So flexibility, transparency, more flexibility, and open debate is what I would want to see.
Yeah, I'm all for those: flexibility, transparency, and open debate.
All right, with that, I'm going to remove the spotlights, and I'm going to switch to gallery view, and encourage all of you maybe to switch to gallery view too and see all of the faces around here. And first, I would just like to encourage maybe everyone all at once, this will be cacophonous, but to unmute and voice your appreciation for Teri and Bryan in whatever way you would like. Just let's have some appreciation and get that out.
Cheers.
Thank you, Teri.
Thank
you.
you.
Woo!
Awesome.
Thank
Thank you so
Teri and
much.
Bryan.
They're fantastic.
Beautiful.
All right, and I'll just hit the mute all button again to then come back to a clean state audio. I'd like to get us a little bit into the meta space here of let's reflect together. We no longer have two people on stage. They've stepped off the stage. They've come down and sat in the circle with the rest of us. So now we are a circle, and I'd like to open it up to the room. We're a pretty big room here, but I think we can still manage to have individuals just come off mute as you feel led. And I don't know, the first thing I would ask is, what did you see? And especially sticking with maybe the theme of appreciation, what did our two representatives, what did they do well? What did you like? What did you notice that maybe made it possible for them to have this kind of discussion around this kind of topic? I'd love to just popcorn and get some noticings out in the space. The floor is open.
I was kind of trembling throughout, like really, my breathing was like, oh God, this is, you know, it's just something you don't see.
I appreciated the format of the empathy circling. It's a different timing and space and to people to process everything that's being said, because it goes back and forth. And it's really, really refreshing to me.
I also appreciated
the relaxed nervous systems. That's how it seemed to me, and the capacity to hear and reflect each other, and how much not opposing it seemed to be. There are, of course, lots of humanity, and that was beautiful to see.
I think Teri and Bryan did an excellent job, and it was a pleasure to listen to. I would also observe that they had very little impact on each other. I did not see very much of one changing the thinking of the other, and that's fine. So with such different thinking, why did this work? And I would suggest the conversation worked because both Bryan and Teri are members of Emergent Commons. There's a unity there that we have. I have these kind of differences that was reflected here today with my relatives, and I could not have the kind of conversation that Bryan and Teri had. It just would not be possible because there is no unifying force, but we have a focus on a better world, on a game B strategy, and we're united because we're in the same organization. So this was wonderful. I really appreciated it, but we can't have these conversations with most people, unfortunately, that we disagree with in society today.
Certainly, there's a context here that is miles away from maybe the average social media interaction that we might see between people. I'd love to maybe invite Bryan and Teri at this point, just to maybe go meta yourself a little bit and reflect just for a minute or two, each of you, on like, how was this experience for you? I know that this is, you know, a bit of a stage, and there was a performance aspect to this to one degree, but just as a human, what was your experience of the conversation?
I do want to hear what Leilani had to say at one point. She had her hand up. I feel really good about this, actually. I'm going to be thinking about it. I'm going to be researching a couple of the points where we had a different impression of what the facts are. But I feel really good about my connection with Bryan. I feel closer to Bryan. You know, we've had several good connections through various events, and I was nervous about this potentially damaging them. But I feel like I don't think I'm going to have too many things I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and say, oh my God, I should have said, because I felt comfortable.
Yeah, I'm just happy I made it through my computer not working. And seems that I survived it. Yeah, I just reflecting, I felt, yeah, it went really well. I appreciate Teri inviting me to this and being a co-creator of this event. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's, I mean, there's a million points that could be made. There's probably more that I could make. But I generally feel like I said what I hoped to say, and felt like I heard from her what I wanted to. Still don't have a great understanding of well, I mean, I feel like I do, still don't agree, but that, you know, on the, with her opinion to support the mandates, but, you know, yeah, I feel pretty good about it. So hopefully we can do some more of these kind of things in this community. So.
Thanks. Was it Leilani? Do you still have a point that's alive?
Well, what I really, so below the level of being in the same community, what I felt was a real respect for each other, that they really wanted to hear each other. They wanted to hear what the other had to say, and they respected it. They didn't have to agree. that they respected it. And to me, the respect, trusting the process, trusting each other was extremely important to being able to bring this off as well as they did. Without that trust, without that mutual respect, I don't think, even in the same community, I don't think it would have happened this way. And I really appreciate both of them greatly. And you too, James. Thanks.
Thanks. And it's dawned on me that perhaps I should point out one more thing that might be invisible to the group here, which is that Teri and Bryan did do some prep work, you know, in planning and approaching this. We met together. They practiced empathy circling around what their favorite movie was and why. So they got a handle on that format and practicing that with each other. And they pre-gamed a little bit too with kind of like what their main arguments were. So yeah, and of course coming into this and in this community and the foundation of connection and respect that we can all have, being grounded in being a part of something larger here together. Yeah, I'm curious if anyone would have any further final thoughts about kind of toward the world or taking this out toward the world. Is there anything that you're taking with you or that you want to try yourself with a friend or a family member or some future conversation? Anything on the outward as we wrap up here? Thoughts?
I'll say something, James. I felt a real trust coming. I could trust in you. And I felt both of them trusting in you and trusting in the process. So I think many of us, not all of us, but many of us really want to be trusting in something, you know, to be part, to surrender into something that we can trust. And it's not always available. So I just really want to honor that the work that you do, it really transmits into my nervous system, and I suspect into many people's nervous systems. Thank you.
I'd love to second that. I feel like James, the way you held the space just in your energy and your open heart and your kindness and your calmness, your tone of voice, like that has to have immense and also immeasurable impacts on the container and the conversation that pursues afterwards. And comparing that to say a CNN anchor, when they invite two different people on to have a debate, they set the stage for conflict. And this was the exact opposite, which is really beautiful to witness.
Michael?
Yes, I wanted to also second the notion that you've done a masterful job, beautiful job of being host to this, and Teri and Bryan both, I think, have just done an excellent job of respecting each other's views and whatnot. I am a senior citizen. I did a natural, when I was a kid, I naturally got through measles, chicken pox, mumps, but I did not accept, I had options when it came to polio and smallpox. And I got vaccinated as a kid, and I'm glad I did. So I've had both experiences, and I'm glad to come at this point in my life to a forum that can work on these views in a positive way. So kudos to all of you. Thank you.
I think that's a great capper. And as we've reached our 90 minutes, I want to say thank you one more time. A big thanks to Bryan and Teri, and let's all give jazz hands. Thank you visually. Much appreciation and love in the room for both of you and the risks that you took today. So yeah, thank you everyone. And may you bring this spirit with you in whatever way you can, wherever you go. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.